Hello everyone, I'm Mojtaba and you are watching episode number 14 of A Sip of Chemistry, where I have the opportunity to talk to great chemistry and material scientists, mainly those with research interest in NMR or glass science around the world. If you are not familiar with this series, A Sip of Chemistry, please check out my channel and watch my previous interviews. My guest today is Dr. Doris Moencke from Alfred University in New York. She's a glass scientist interested in the relationship between structure and glass properties. Her main focus is on optical properties and color in glass. She has taught and conducted research in several countries, including Germany, Greece, Switzerland, Brazil, and the United States. I asked her about the differences between the educational systems in Europe and the US. She has also studied ancient glasses, which is an interesting topic. In this episode, you'll be hearing amazing stories about one of her recent archaeological research projects on glasses made 3,000 years ago. Without further ado, please stay tuned and watch this exciting interview with Dr. Doris Moencke. Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you for agreeing doing this interview. Uh, so, please tell us more about yourself and when and where did you go to school and university?
Um, so I went to high school, but all my pre-K to 12 or whatever it is in Germany in Munich. And I started my first university degree in Munich. So my first 5 semesters, I was studying chemistry at the Ludwig Maximilians University in Munich. In Germany at that time, we had a different system than today in Germany. So we didn't have a bachelor-master's degree. That was combined in one diploma. So the chemie diploma, chemistry diploma was like 4 to 5 years, and you couldn't leave with a bachelor degree in the middle. So there was an intermediate degree, well, no, an intermediate exam, which is kind of to our bachelor level now. And it's recognized by all German universities. So if you pass that, then you could finish at another German university your degree. So it was like the basic studies, and then you could specialize. So I did the first 5 semesters in Munich, and then I wanted to specialize in environmental chemistry. So at that time, I didn't know about glass or anything. I was thinking ecology, climate change. What could I do? I like chemistry, so that for all of these studies, chemistry is a good background. And at that time, what was it? I started in 91, and the reunification in Germany had just been 2 years before, 89. So the East German universities they were more inventive in new courses. And the University of Jena just started a very new class, environmental chemistry. But it was so new that, they started after 4 semesters. So in the fall semester, but I was done in February with my studies in Munich. So I should have to wait for half a year before they actually opened this new program. And I didn't want to wait that long. I always wanted to study 1 year abroad. So that was pre-internet. I was writing a lot of letters, and in the end, I applied and got accepted at the University of Adelaide in Australia. So I went to Australia for a full year, doing a lot of classes that I might need for Jena for this environmental chemistry class. Because I was 1 full year in Australia, I missed the first semester of the new course in Jena. So in the end, they recognized everything I had done in Australia. but so in was it 94? Then I continued my studies in Jena in environmental chemistry this time. And that means a lot of analytical chemistry, some technology, a lot of geology, and these toxicology, ecology. And I passed all the oral exams in the end for the diploma. I think the final exams for the diploma degree, they are a little bit like the qualifier we do in Alfred. So you have all those oral exams, but then you have to do your master thesis afterwards, once all the classes are done. And for that, I went on an Erasmus exchange program to Finland, co-advised by one of my German advisors, and then I had a Finnish advisor. So I was there from November to August in 97 for all the experiments and starting the writing of the thesis, and then I came back and finished it. Took a little bit longer than normal, but with going abroad, and that is a little bit, all this year in Australia was counted as leave semester, and the time in Finland as well. So if I count these extra semesters, I learned a lot. So then I would be a slow student. If I don't count them because they were leave semesters, I was a fast student. And so in the end, I got the master's degree was on mercury speciation in fish. So nothing about glass.
Yeah.
All about analytical chemistry. And so, yeah, I successfully defended in the end of 97, I think. Yes. And then I knew I wanted to stay in academia, wanted to get a PhD. I think especially in chemistry, there were hardly any jobs if you don't have a PhD. And I didn't like organic chemistry. So I was looking for any place where I can continue studies in inorganic chemistry. And in Jena, that's the place of Schott and Zeiss. They had a department of glass chemistry. So I went there. I asked the institute director if he thinks they have a PhD position for me. At that time, he didn't took any girls in, but told me to ask Dr. Doris Moencke, another faculty at that department, and she did have a PhD position for me, gave me a book about glass chemistry, or just glass, I think, technology and chemistry, and on a subtitle, a very small pocket book, and told me to read it over the Christmas break, and I could start my PhD on 1st of February. And that's what I did. And she was a wonderful supervisor, still is. She's now retired, and we are still in contact. And I stayed with glass ever since.
Yeah, you had a long journey. And even after that, up to this point that you are a faculty member in the University of Alfred University, you've had a long journey, right? You've been in different countries, Sweden, Greek, Germany, and I don't know. And you did also several positions. So would you talk about it also, for your long journey?
So I always knew I really liked the research. And compared to what my graduate students here in Alfred do, I was kind of in this ivory tower that I was paid for my PhD thesis research. So I didn't have to work as a TA as a PhD student. I didn't have to do a lot of extras. That institute was spoiled with technicians. So we had an optician who was polishing our glass samples with excellent quality. And a lot of other technicians helping in a lot of ways. And so I could really focus on my research, and I enjoyed that a lot. And I had an offer after my thesis to work for Schott, and I didn't want to go there yet, so I still wanted to stay on. And at the same time, I think I never, so the politics of getting to a professorship, I never fully was involved in that. And my supervisor was like the lowest hierarchy in that institute. And so I learned so much from her. I didn't necessarily learn how the high school politics works. And somehow I never had I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know if I would be good enough. And I was a little bit shy about the whole teaching and speaking in front of other people. So doing the research was great. So perhaps one of the national institutes where you can do the research without actually having to teach and all of these things. So in Germany, it would be Fraunhofer, Helmholtz, Max Planck. I mean, that might have been something I might have dreamed of rather than really a faculty position. So as long as a postdoc, then I could do my research without all the burdens of teaching, I was kind of happy. And so I didn't do the more obvious things you had to do to become a professor. So, and then in Germany, there's another thing. They have this habilitation qualification required to be a professor. They only slowly changed it when I started. So actually 10 years later, there were junior professorships and something like this. We didn't have that at my time. So after staying on at the institute doing like 6 years as a postdoc, I actually had a lot of research and wanted to write a habilitation thesis on that, which would then qualify me to be allowed to assess PhD students. Before that, I could get funding as a postdoc and pay PhD students and supervise them, but I couldn't be on their committee without this habilitation or the title of a professor. So I had all of that together. I was then just pretty much ready to submit, really start the process of submission and everything. And then the institute's director suddenly didn't want me to do this, saying we just had 2 other habilitations. They didn't immediately get a professorship, so I wasn't encouraged to do that. And my supervisor said she is so low in the hierarchy, she can't help me in the process. And I trusted her, but I didn't understand until 10 years later how politic that really is. So at that university, you really depend on just on the already established professors to push you through. It isn't so much about your actually content of the thesis. So it's more political something. So I was never good at those games. And so somehow the habilitation fell flat. And then I had the chance to go to Greece as a Marie Curie fellow for 2 years. So I went to Stratos Commitzos, and just as Doris Erd was my doctor mutter in Jena, so the supervisor from which I learned so much so much about glasses in Greece, Stratos Commitzos became like a postdoc father to me, and I learned so much about infrared and Raman spectroscopy. And I had visited Greece before for like 4 weeks, 3 months, for several times. So, and now I worked there for 4 years. First 2 years as a Marie Curie fellow, and then 2 more years on a Greek stipend. And it was, we are still in contact. They gave me title of an external scientific collaborator and we still have joint papers. We currently have 3 joint projects we work on, and I try to visit him when I'm in Europe during the summer. But there was the economic crisis, so they didn't have the money for me anymore. And then I had the offer to go back to Germany as a postdoc, first to Erlangen. So that was the group from Dr. Bondarczyk. And when the whole group moved to Jena, I moved back to Jena with it. So now with a different group and Professor Bondarczyk being the new institute's director, I had a new chance to go for my habilitation. And so at that time now I was supervising my own PhD students they had funding for. I started teaching classes and labs. So there were a couple of labs I was responsible for and doing a lot of substitute teaching and other things. So now I slowly did much more of that aspect of becoming a faculty in the long run. I now was older than some of the students, some of the postdocs who would apply for a professorship. And probably more like a typical female trait that when I read a job description and for a professor and I compare myself with the skills qualified for, I think it has to match all of those. So what I hear from others is like the guys are much more seeing that as a game and apply anyway, even if less than 60% matches the qualifications, while the girls seem to be a little bit more, or we have to be good in all of them. Don't just those job description, they always look for the 300% they will never get from anyone. So if you just there's some overlap, apply anyway. If you don't apply, you can never get the job. And there's hardly anyone who matches with everything. But yeah, at that time I didn't know that, and I was still a little bit too careful with that. And yeah, for a lot of reasons, there wasn't really this outlook for permanent position, and also difference in teaching philosophy and content. So I didn't feel that I should stay in that group. And so I quit that position, and I had met Alex Clare at a conference earlier. So she was faculty at Alfred University, and she had a really fun presentation on how the art and the engineering department in Alfred work together. And I really liked that. And while in Greece, I had started working on archaeological glass pieces. And through that work, I had collaborations with archaeologists and some artists too. So I just asked her if I could come to Alfred for a short-term visit for 3 months, while I was working on a grant to go to Brazil for half a year as a postdoc, which bought me time to look for a permanent position. And yeah, the German exchange service, the DAAD, had some nice short-term grants, and Alfred was willing to host me. So in really a very short time, I was able to come to Alfred for 3 months in the fall of 2018. No, 2016, that was. And I really enjoyed the winter here and working with these glass art engine class and everything they had been doing here. And then I went back to Germany, defend my habilitation. And by that time, the grant with Brazil had come through, and I could go there as a researcher for, I think it was half a year with a little break in between. And that time, while in Brazil, I was writing together with Professor Johnson from Linnaeus University in Sweden, proposal to visit them as a visiting professor for 1 year. And that went through. So from November 2017 to 18, I was then in Sweden as a visiting professor. And during that time, Alfred University opened their search again for a glass faculty. And so I was the one who was successful. And in November 2018, I could actually start my current position here.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
looking back, it's great. I mean, I always had something really exciting to do. I like traveling. I like to work with experts in their field around the world. But it's hard to tell a young postdoc who wants to be a professor, oh, just do as I did.
Mm,
There was a lot of uncertainty in between.
I see.
And there were a lot of applications that were not successful. I mean, the field of glass is small enough that I applied for all kinds of material science positions as faculty around the world. And glass was often too specific, or I made it in one of the later rounds, or I didn't. So it's now looking back, it was great, but yeah, there were a lot of unsuccessful applications too.
Eventually, you ended up being a professor in Alfred University, which I think it's a great university in material science, specifically in glass science, isn't it? I I see Alfred University as a glass scientist maker, isn't it? There are so many great researchers, professors in this university with glass science background who have shaped the glass science.
Yes, it sure is. It's kind of weird. I mean, Jena is such a similar place in Germany
Mhm.
in a way, going back, and Alfred in the US. And from the textbooks with written by Alfred alum in glass, it's quite a lot. And it's the glass department, but ceramic department, material science. So this Alfred has a unique structure as it's a private university with the statutory New York State College of Ceramics.
Mhm.
And so the glass department is part of the School of Engineering, where we have 7 different departments. 4 of them are private and 3 of them are private: renewable energy, electronic engineering, and mechanical engineering.
Mhm.
And then 4 of them are statutory in the New York State College of Ceramics. So that's material science, ceramic, glass, science and engineering, and biomaterials science engineering. At the same time, the School of Art and Design is also in the statutory part. So the sculpture in ceramics and in glass blowing, glass casting, neon. So all of that's also part of the statutory part, which gives us a joint administrative unit in a way. And
Mhm.
so we are both a little bit an outsider in the whole, well, not outsider, but we are joined on one side that's a little bit different from the rest of the private side of the universe, where at the same time we both have private and statutory parts in our departments. So there is a very strong cross-linking everywhere. And then Alfred University is a very small university. So in some subjects we excel. I think glass art is also #1 in the nation for glass art in Alfred. And psychology, for example, has an excellent program. But we don't do major grad classes in all programs. So there are some, and we are really good in those. And then we are very small universities, so we all know each other, and so a lot of students do some really interdisciplinary studies and double majors, or because they like ceramic and dance. And we can make it work for whatever the students are interested in. And having a glass art department really close to us, it's great. And the grad students do utilize a lot of the resources from both. So I have a grad student from the art department doing an independent study with me to learn more about colors or turbidity in glasses. And we have our engineering students who try to go down in the hot shop and making some fun art thing. And we use the hot shop making Prince Rupert drops, which we use in outreach activities when we have school classes here or prospective studies. So it's that's a lot of fun and joy working here in Alfred, this having the engineering and the art department working together.
Coloring glass, you mentioned already, and optical properties. I think these are your main topics, your main favorite topics that you've done a lot in this area. So, which types of questions you actually would love to answer in terms of the optical properties or coloring glass? Coloring glass, also, you have written a book chapter, I think. So, which types of questions you are interested in these types of applications?
I think from the number of publications I have, most of the publications focus more on structure property correlation. So doing infrared and Raman measurements on the structure and trying to relate that to the properties we see in the glasses. But the colors have always been a part of what I do. And so my PhD was on cobalt, irradiation-induced defects in cobalt and nickel doped glasses. So that's small dopant concentration. And yes, the glasses were blue to purple for cobalt, and they were yellow, green, orange, brown, purple for nickel, which gives all kinds of fun colors. And then I continued that with a postdoc on photoionization of all kinds of dopants. And for that, it was important to understand how a certain transition metal ion, depending on the redox state and the coordination, will change their optical spectra. And then only if I understand how it's in the pristine glass, I can see how does it change after irradiation. And some of those we found we have the photooxidation to cobalt 3+, which we usually don't see in glass. And then we try to stabilize the cobalt 3+ chemically in the glass to have the reference spectrum. And that's something we just published a paper on, like trying to stabilize the most unusual oxidation state of manganese in this case. And we got not only to manganese 5+, but also manganese 6+, which usually you don't see in glass. So these colors, it's at the moment, it's this unusual paper. That's something we actively pursue as a research. Otherwise, optical property, colors in glass is more undergrad students love that. It's an easy senior thesis to play with redox ratios to see what's going on there. The artists are very interested in making their own color. So that's where we do it. I teach classes about structure and properties of optical glasses, and colors is part of it. Really small impurities of transition metal ions can be really important for optical glasses, where usually you try to avoid them whenever possible, but to avoid some impurities in melted glasses is very, very difficult. So we just have to understand them and work with them. So in a way, it's always there in the background. And so if I go somewhere else, I'm invited and asked to give a talk, especially more public talks than talking about colored glasses or the history of glass. That's where the public can always listen. and likes that, and even glass experts like some of the history and learn more about that, and explaining the difference of different colors and charge transfer transitions. So it's part of, it's something I do with the teaching and stuff, but it's for my actual research and my students' research, it's usually more one of the smaller parts, the colors. But the art,
So another thing is that archaeometry, right? Archaeometry. Is that true?
Yes.
So
archaeometry is the study of archaeological artifacts by natural sciences. That means methods based on chemistry and physics and all of this. So using our engineering labs to help with the understanding of things that, archaeological questions in a way. And that can be provenance, that can be dating. So I'm not an expert in dating, and with glasses, that's very, very difficult to do. But we have like, so at the moment I have a student who has a background in art conservation and tries to answer 3 different questions we have, which are based in archaeometry. And one is going back to my time in Greece when I was getting my first archaeological samples for infrared measurements. The infrared is great. It's a surface-sensitive method that is non-destructive. And we got 3,000-year-old Mycenaean glass fragments from the late Bronze Age. And I put them in the infrared spectrometer. And the week before, I had measured Pyrex again and again. I had studied that for small structural changes depending on the fictive temperature or thermal polling and other things. So I knew the spectra very well. Now I measured this Mycenaean glass sample, and it did not look like a window glass, but it looked like a Pyrex glass in the infrared spectrometer. So we thought that cannot be. They didn't know how to do Pyrex. What's wrong? And we measured again, and same result. And in the end, we figured that there was a corrosion layer outside that was more polymerized than the bulk of the glass, but it wasn't a pure silica layer, it was a borosilicate layer, according to the infrared spectra. While the bulk didn't contain boron. And so we figured in the end that these old fragments were gilded with thin foils of gold, and that the goldsmith might have used borax to attach the gold to the glass, and that there might have been a reaction. Now, the infrared there's some ambiguity, so we don't have the 100% proof of how this happened. Some water bands can look a little bit like what we saw, but the other water bands were missing. So we tried to follow up later with a PhD student I had in Jena, and we did replicates, and we were able to replicate these borosilicate layer by an outside treatment with borax. So we kind of felt that our hypothesis might not be too bad. But we still don't have the full proof. We tried neutron tomography. Neutrons will be caught by boron, and a very thin layer of borosilicate outside an archaeological sample should give us, if there's boron inside, we should see that, and we should see the depth of the layer. But there is some interference from hydrogen scattering from corroded old samples, and we didn't have exactly this access to the same old samples. So now my students, we try to get samples from the Corning Museum of Glass. And this time we have Randy Youngman from Corning right next to them, and he would be willing to do solid state NMR. And there's no interference from water with boron NMR. So if we see that there's boron in the sample, we know there's boron in the sample. And then we can prove what I proposed like 12 years ago. And this student follows up on this one. We are just in the process of getting the samples. And so we might be able to prove what happens there. And then it gives the archaeologists just a new puzzle piece they can work with. That, oh yeah, it shows they knew how to work born, either the glass workers or the gold workers. So they used it at that time 3,000 years ago, which we haven't really seen discussed in the literature. So yeah, archaeometry is a fun subject. It doesn't give you a lot of funding. There's a lot of volunteering in a way. But it also, there's some fascinating people I met through working in these projects, and yeah, archaeologists in the US, in Germany, in Greece, and it's
Yeah, that's an interesting things to do, you know, science and history. You mix them and you try to learn what's been done 1,000 years ago. What was the age of the glass? What's your guess about?
that's the oldest one. That's 3,000 years old. So that's the late Bronze Age.
Mm,
Um,
1,000 years. That's
so
amazing.
that's really one of the old glasses we have. And the other we are now looking, that's like medieval red glasses, where I know the people who excavated that forest workshop in the town of Silts, and they found one little glass workshop. They only did the red glass, and there are thousands and thousands of red shards there, never sold, never brought somewhere else. And so we don't know. They behave different from the melting properties than most soda lime silica glasses do. The composition is slightly different, so we try to understand it's copper red, and there is crystallization, there are redox changes. And normally, the first time we looked at those two in Jena, more for the optical properties. Now we look at them for the melting properties and the viscosity and thermal properties. In Jena, it was really hard to replicate them in normal electric furnaces. Here in Alfred, with the gas-fired furnaces in the hot shop, we might be able to be much closer to the actual methods used in medieval Germany to make those glasses. So we may better understand what they might have tried, why they didn't like the pieces they actually formed. It might be that they try to do copper ruby, the transparent, nice ruby, and instead it crystallized every time they annealed their samples. So that's something we will look in. And then the student is also looking at arene glass and those really iridescent rainbow-like surfaces, which is a much newer
I see.
time compared to the others.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you didn't like teaching, you didn't like to be in front of other people and do the teaching stuff, but things have changed, right? Now you are actually actively involved in the summer school in Brazil in UFSCar University. I think UFSCar is the federal Sao Carlos Federal University, something like that. So please tell us about this experience last summer. I mean, the past summer actually. You did
Yeah,
it.
last year I wasn't part of the last summer school in Brazil. So the whole thing that I was always a shy child, so I was listening more. I'm still listening first before I stand up and talk, and I still, if I know the subject, I now feel good about speaking out. Since I hadn't worked as a TA during my PhD, I only was slowly being exposed to guiding labs and guiding other PhD students and helping with chemistry labs as a postdoc in Jena. What I did do in Jena, that I had to do a lot of substitute teaching on short notice. And that kind of also takes the pressure from you, because if you only get a day notice and say, oh yeah, you have to teach tomorrow, here, a couple of slides. And then you have to improvise, and you did the best, and there isn't, and the students understand that you didn't had, that this wasn't your job to provide and really deep dive into the whole content of this class. You're just trying to do the best in it, and it usually worked out good. So by the time I came to, actually in Brazil, the first time in Brazil in 2017, I was giving a spectroscopy class there as a visiting researcher. And I was planning that from the beginning to the end, and I enjoyed doing that. And it was about something I knew, and the students were really, really eager. So even on a Friday afternoon, when at some point I said, well, this takes longer than I thought, we can continue on Monday. And they were, no, we are staying. And they did. And so that was, so, and then of course in Alfred, I got my own classes. And by that time I had a collection of different long and small workshops and classes. So then it became easier. And the more you teach, the more you know what works and what questions you get and where you have to spend more time. And then, I'm in a way in a privileged position here in Alfred with the glass. It's a small department, so our classes are small. And a lot of our glass classes are they are not required for all engineers. So I only have students who really want to be there, which makes a big difference. And a lot of electives. So it's really, it's a joy to teach with them. It might be easier than teaching a big class where most of them are not yet interested in glass. So we try to convert them. You're not always successful. The summer schools, yes. I mean, I have always, through all the collaborations I had been invited to regularly at the master's class for archaeometry in Greece, to go there and teach the archaeologists about glass, what it is, and a little bit of more the technological aspects. And I enjoyed that. And then in Greece, when, the spectroscopy class, last year I was there for a 2-week visit, independent from the summer school. But again, I was giving a class on optical properties and spectroscopy for a week, a short course, more or less. And I really enjoyed that. And so from that, it was the idea from Professor Edgar Zanotto to start a closer relation between Alfred University and UFSCA. And there have been all kinds of links. So we had, in 2019, we had given the award of a Scholes lecture to Edgar, who was presenting here. And then, through my visit and my repetitive visits back to Brazil, there is a connection. We also, Caio Bragato, he is a graduate from UFSCA, currently at Coe College. He will start in Alfred in January as a faculty. Benjamin Moulton has been a postdoc in Brazil for at least 5 or more years. And he is a glass faculty now for over a year in Alfred. So there are connections between Alfred University and Sao Carlos on a lot of levels. So this year, Edgar invited all the glass faculty, if we want to come to Brazil, to discuss a deeper way of collaboration between our institutes, including student exchange. And so that coincides with the upcoming summer school in March, so that Alfred faculty will be co-teaching that event. And I think some of my students one was attending last year and he stayed some extra time to do measurements there. And I think this time I also hope to have one of my students staying a little bit longer to do some research there. And I hope we will see Brazilian students here in Alfred soon.
Yeah, I've been in Sao Carlos last year, 2023. Yeah, I stayed at Helmut Eckert for 3 months, and that was a great opportunity. I met also at Garzanato there. Um, so I would like to ask another question uh, about the educational system in different countries. You've been in Germany, now you are in US. So I think there are totally different approaches for hiring graduate students. In Germany, I think you advertise a position, then different applicants they apply, and a committee decides who should be hired. And it's different, I think, in the US. A professor, a supervisor decides about the applicant. I think that's the case. So, um, how do you see these differences? Which one you prefer? Now, you as a uh, faculty member in the US, do you like it that you choose your students, or you think that it's a better idea to select a student by the committee, and then maybe you get uh, more applicants, and among them there should be great students. So how do you see it?
I think the biggest difference really is that in Germany you have to have a master's degree in order to be allowed to start your PhD.
Mm-hmm.
The master's degree is part of the normal university. You have lots of classes, and then, okay, you have your thesis work at the very end.
Mm.
But that's the other big difference. In Germany, you don't pay tuition.
Exactly.
So, going for a master's degree, you have to get the money to support your living, your rent and food. But otherwise, everyone can do that. And there is some grants that might help those where the parents can't, but it's so much easier if you don't have to pay tuition. Because of the high tuition, it's so that here in Alfred, at least, most of the master students, other than having to pass the qualifier, they're doing pretty much very similar things than the PhD students do.
Mm.
They pay for the stipend and the tuition. They get a stipend. So we have very few students who actually pay for going through a master's program. We have some some students from Corning, where they work full time for Corning, and Corning pays Alfred University to get a degree for these students. So they attend in part-time. They take much longer than others. And they don't have to do the same things our grad students have to do, but they are working full-time at Corning. Mm-hmm. They get some hours off too. So some of them come down once a week for their master's thesis. So they get some time off, but they work and earn their living, everything through Corning. So they are a little bit different from the grad students we have here full-time. Mm-hmm. And so this difference that you can actually start your PhD without having a master's first, and that you have to take so many classes. In Germany, you don't have to do classes once you have your diploma or master's degree. Mm-hmm. So there are no required classes for PhD, or not at the universities I was. And so we didn't have a committee in that sense, which I think a committee is kind of a safeguard against the whims of one professor alone. Mm-hmm. If you are lucky, your supervisor really cares about you. If you're unlucky, they don't. And then it's very tricky to get. So I think the committee is not a bad idea. but it's mostly it's you have the same people in Germany or in America, and it's so much about really how much do the professors care, how much do they care about taking time to mentor and advise,
Yeah,
and
that's true.
um, and how respectful are they for grad students. So my grandfather was a professor, but he was all his life really surprised that he got where he was. Um, so and he kind of stumbled into it too. So I wasn't learning from him how to do it. So in the theory behind it, and I I don't think I ever compared myself to him. But he treated all his PhD students or all his students, also his undergrad students. He said, "Oh, they could be my future colleagues."
Yeah.
So he always saw that in every one of his students, and I think that's not the worst advice. So, I mean, we all were somewhere where we didn't know anything and tried to learn, um, and this, yeah, how you treat the students. So I have seen good and bad examples on both sides of the Atlantic and everywhere. So that's not the main difference. I found this caring about the students while also demanding good science is a very good combination. And I found that in Sao Carlos or Athens, both countries where there isn't all this research money around. And if you go into this niche subject of glass research, both of them, Storas Kamitsos and Edgar Sarnotto, they had to be the best to get the funding they have, to get the equipment and the research they are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if the chairs in the labs mismatch, it doesn't matter if the instruments are good and if the evaluation is good, and if just the vibe in the labs are good. And in other labs they had more money, but that doesn't matter if you don't care with all your heart for the students and advise and work with them.
Now, I would love to go to the next part, which is beyond the lab. I would like to ask a few questions about what you do beyond the lab. What do you do at your spare time?
Well, I wish there would be more spare time. But yeah, I just love reading. And I mean, just my life history already showed I really like traveling. And yeah, I live here in Alfred. My family lives in Germany. My sister, her family, my cousin, their family. It's so going there and visiting with them and catching up and seeing the people that taught me so much, like my doctor mother or my postdoc father, going to Greece and Germany and seeing them and discussing in person. And yeah, using the excuse of nice conference to get around the world and
Mm-hmm.
learn more about the world. So I really do enjoy that.
Yeah.
Um,
So, what was your dream job when you were a kid?
I mean, as a little kid, um, I think I had no idea. I was playing being a vet, or we were playing pirates.
That's amazing. So, um, if you could live in another life, in a parallel life, which job you'd like to pick?
I don't know. I never thought about these other things. In the end, um, I mean, is this currently the perfect world? Are there things I want to change about the current world and the way we are ignoring climate change and all the other things? So no, we are not in the perfect world. But um, I found a pretty nice spot for myself, which I couldn't have dreamt of when I was little. So really, most of the things I do, I really enjoy.
Mhm.
Not necessarily all the paperwork that comes with it, but um, this glass research is really fun. And I'm not so much one of the what if persons.
I see.
So no, I'm happy.
Okay, amazing. So I wanted to ask, do you have any regret in your career, in your professional life, or in your personal life? And I think I know the answer. You already said you are happy. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think really mostly in hindsight, was this application a waste of time? Yeah, perhaps it was, but in the end, you forget about those and you remember those that worked out. And I mean, there are always small things. So yeah, if I spoke up here, or if I had dedicated a little bit more time here, but that's not no in the
I
always lose some and win some. But the big things they all worked out for me so far.
Mhm.
No, it's
Okay, that's great. So, who is your favorite scientist in the history?
and yeah, that's another one where I always have trouble picking one. I can't give you a favorite meal because I think it's the change, the diversity. I can't pick one favorite book because it depends so much on my mood. What I need. If I need something funny or if I'm curious and want to learn something new, or want to be challenged in what I'm thinking. I don't have one favorite movie.
Yeah, it's hard always to pick just one.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, there are some who might have done just I mean, impressive, but more normal science, but just their life challenges, or I mean, being a female scientist in a time when they weren't allowed to take positions and were ignored. There are a lot of challenges involved with that.
Mhm.
And I mean, some really good scientists might not be the people I like just from their personalities, while others.
Yeah.
uh, so I don't, and and I don't think there is this. There are very few where one discovery really changes everything. It's the one life-changing thing. I'm more like building the brick. Everyone is adding one piece of brick here and there, and eventually we get to something really big and huge, rather than one scientist alone.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
agree.
So,
So,
for the
for the
last
last
question,
question,
if
if
a
a
time
time
machine
machine
existed,
existed,
would you
would you
rather
rather
go
go
100,
100,
200
200
years
years
back
back
or
or
forward?
forward?
I just finished reading the whole St. Mary's series from Jodie Taylor.
Mhm.
And all the challenges going back in time with all the things where they don't, I mean, 100 years, it's a lot of technology we are depending on didn't exist then. um, so
And
I
you have
that
You have worked on old glasses maybe 200 years ago.
thing is, I can study glasses. I'm not a glass artist or a glass worker. So I had like now two grad students with the flame worker education. So they can do things to the glass I can just dream of.
Mm.
The artists can do that. I couldn't really make anything out of. I think 100 years ago, they rather need the people really can manipulate the glass
Yeah.
than someone like me who can melt it but can't form anything useful out of it.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I think I would be scared in both directions. Um,
So,
whatever the future holds in 100 years. I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe it's scary. I don't know. I don't like to go forward. I would love to go back. So thank you, Professor. Thanks for your time and thanks for sharing your insights, your thoughts.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you. Bye.